We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
Mike, you left the audience on an absolute gem last podcast. You said, have I told the story about the dog that came on me? You still haven't told me this story off camera, so I'm reacting to this live. Okay. Please lead off.
So, I mean, I was talking about the dog that we had in college. That was my roommate's dog.
The one that pooped behind the
So
counter.
we got it our senior year. They got all hyped one night talking about it and got a miniature dachshund. That was a puppy, probably 6 weeks, 8 weeks
I
old.
thought dachshunds are already miniature.
So it's even smaller. This thing's tiny.
Really?
So the dachshunds are small, but this one's even smaller. And named it Optimus Prime, called it Opie for short. It was...
Opie?
I don't think either of them, he had a dog, my roommate, but he had not, been the one to solely raise the dog. So he knew about how to take care of a dog, but not how much work it took, especially when it's a puppy. And so this dog was just pooping and peeing all over the place. Like I said, kind of uncontrolled, and obviously it's a puppy, and so we haven't had it neutered yet. And this dog went out when anyone would come home. It was the most excited dog to this day that I've ever seen in my life, in terms of it would just lose its mind and be shaking for 15 or so minutes afterwards, just literally shaking.
My buddy's dachshund was like that to a degree.
So it'd sprint up to the door, lay on its back, and then shake.
Yes, I've seen dachshunds.
And then I would start, and I would just rub its stomach every time. One time I come back, rubbing its stomach for a good while, and all of a sudden just shot.
Oh,
and I'm
dude.
literally all over my forearm and hand, and I'm just mortified, standing there realizing I just jerked off.
That's a fetish for some.
But I hadn't touched anything. To be clear
come on,
here.
that's a lie.
To be clear,
That's
no.
a lie.
I had just rubbing
his tummy for a
normal,
while.
Someone does. I mean, yeah, it was probably I was going harder than normal.
Oh,
I will just say, but I had not.
You had a goal in mind.
No, it just cracked me up that a dog would lose its mind and love it so much. And it lost
insane.
more than its mind.
I googled miniature dachshund to see what it looks like. This is an embarrassment of a dog.
They're hilarious.
I don't know why you'd ever get this. It looks ridiculous.
Yeah,
it also looks like a liability. This thing could get stepped on.
That's the thing. It's life has to be I realize now why he would get so anxious and scared, because everything's fucking massive for that dog. They're coming up to your.
You guys come back as the only people that don't want to kill it. Really?
Okay, well that was way too far.
That might. That was an insane story. To pivot to football on the Catch and Early Buzz, and we have Alvin Kamara. His mugshot released. I don't really have any comments on this. It looked rough. He's obviously slammed.
It's just the Vegas strikes again, dude.
Dude, Vegas. I mean,
Vegas is taking.
He was at. You know where he was?
Names.
He was at the casino we were at, East West Triangle, the Cromwell.
Was he?
Yeah.
I lost
the
too much money. Cromwell's a great casino.
It was a very cheap place to gamble. Alvin Kamara getting after it at the Cromwell. I don't even know what nightclubs are there. But did you also see? Speaking of guys who were slammed, Allen Iverson at the game. He was at, I don't know what game he was at, but he was eating popcorn. His eyes were sealed shut. Guy was having a fucking day. What an exciting catch.
We also didn't talk Dennis Allen to the Saints last time.
This has gotten increasingly more important.
Yeah, actual things that matter. Dennis Allen, friend of the show? Do we call him a friend of the show?
I don't think he's a friend of the show.
We've talked about him.
We've talked about him.
He probably hates us. But that one I thought was always going to happen,
Yeah.
That one seemed like the writing was on the wall. When Sean Payton left, it's you couldn't lose Dennis Allen. You were winning games because of Dennis Allen.
He's also due for another opportunity, right?
Yes.
What he's done with that defense in New Orleans. Yeah, they have a lot of talent. I think people would say that too. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Marshawn Lattimore, Cameron Jordan. They've had a lot of talent on that defense. But I still think he's maximized a lot of that. Yeah. They've consistently been not just a top defense, but a top defense against really good quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
They've been Brady's kryptonite for a handful of games this past season, even before that. So have to be impressed with what Dennis Allen does. And has done. I'm excited for him to be a head coach.
And they keep status quo. Like, there's not going to be any head coaching or coaching turnover really besides Sean Payton. Like, that's the only guy that really left there, because the interesting thing to me, the crazy thing to me, is that Pete Carmichael has been there since 2009 as their offensive coordinator. And that dude's just like good with that.
Yeah.
He's just, I'm okay being coordinator, which rarely you see, but all the respect for that dude.
All righty, that's the Catch and Early Buzz. Going to dive into the NFL Draft position rankings for 2022. But before we do that, presenting sponsor of Tailgate, DraftKings. The moment we've been waiting for since September is finally here. In honor of the big game, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 56, is giving new customers 56-1 odds on either team. Bet just $5 and get 280 in free bets if your team wins. DraftKings Sportsbook is now live in New York, meaning you can bet from almost a third of the country. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF and get 56-1 odds on either team. Bet just $5 and get 280 in free bets if your team wins. That's promo code PFF at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 56. Must be 21 years or older. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for a full list of requirements and state-specific responsible gaming resources. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. On to the position rankings here. And you did not, this is regardless of positional value, obviously. You are only ranking like the actual talent level of each of these positions.
So this is the strength of the class at each position compared to your run-of-the-mill class.
Gotcha.
So, like, which classes have the most talent compared to your usual year?
I like that.
So, like, last year, wide receiver, quarterback were 1 and 2 because those classes had more talent at those positions than you pretty much ever find in any given draft. Whereas, I'm trying to think of tight end, or not tight end, defensive tackle last year. We didn't have one go in the first round. Yeah. That was a weak class. And shit, it's kind of a weak class again. So, which is an interesting trend that we're getting weaker defensive tackle classes. But let's dive in.
All right. First and foremost, what do you got?
All right. So I think the specialist class, in terms of the one that has the most talent for its position, that truthfully I've seen since we started doing this in 2014, grading college, the 2015 draft, is I think linebacker.
Really?
I really like this linebacker.
I'm kind of stunned by this one.
This one, I think there's 4 guys who I would seriously myself consider in the first round. That's Devin Lloyd out of Utah, Nakobe Dean out of Georgia, Leo Chanel from Wisconsin, and Brian Asamoah from Oklahoma. Those guys to me are all, if you draft them in the first round, cool. And then that's not even including Alabama's Christian Harris, who a lot of people are high on. Not us here at PFF, but a lot of people are high on. And Quay Walker from Georgia, who's been now mocked in a handful of first-round mocks. So there's a lot of talent at linebacker. And then after that, you have this kind of tier of guys who I feel really good about on day 2, with Chad Muma from Wyoming, Brandon Smith from Penn State, Channing Tindall from Georgia, even Troy Anderson from Montana State, and Darian Beavers from Cincinnati. Like, those guys, all top 100 players. That's, let me do the little napkin math here for you. That's going to be 11 guys that end up in the top 100 on PFF's draft board linebacker position. That's
rare.
That's rare. Exactly.
And a lot of that is because, and I mean, obviously every year that PFF is creating this draft board, positional value is heavily factored in. It's why running backs kind of fall a bit deeper into your offensive linemen, linebackers. The fact that you're going to have 11 in your top 100 when it's all said and done, I think is impressive. And I really do like the depth of this class so much that, obviously, Devin Lloyd and Nakobe Dean, they're likely first rounders, and I think they are different in terms of athleticism and the type of tools that they have. But like Devin Lloyd in the top 10 or top 15 versus potentially getting, you know, a unique linebacker on day 2 like a Channing Tindall, Troy Anderson, you know, Darian Beavers. I don't know. I think the depth of the class could have me considering linebacker on day 2 overtaking some of the guys at the top. Yeah,
I agree with that, but I do think Devin Lloyd, in terms of just safety of prospects, dude's pretty safe. Like he's not, you're not chasing too much high end with him. I shouldn't even say that, because he is, like, he could be an elite linebacker sooner rather than later. But like, you feel about as good as him as, I don't want to say any linebacker we've graded, but like, he's up there in the top 5 linebackers we've graded in terms of like certainty that he will be at least a quality NFL linebacker.
I don't think I've seen like obvious 2 linebackers go in the first round in mocks since the Devin Bush and Devin White draft. Yeah, when we both
those guys were locks.
Yeah, those guys were locks. I don't know. Do you feel locks with Dean and Lloyd?
Yeah, I think I locked them both.
Oh wow,
so
you've already locked
obviously,
them. They're locked.
I feel like locks.
You locked them both. What is the second best position here?
So linebacker 1, I like edge 2. Obviously, top 2 players on the PFF board, Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeau, are edge, and a lot of that's positional value caked in, and, you know, certainty of evaluation with edge caked in, that it's just an easier position to evaluate than some on a football field. But I like the class. And then you have George Karlaftis from Purdue, David Ojabo from Michigan, and Trayvon Walker from Georgia, who are going to be like pretty surefire first rounders at this point. And then I really love kind of the depth going into day 2 in the top 50 picks. Like Arnold Ebiketie from Penn State, Drake Jackson from USC, Cameron Thomas from San Diego State, Jermaine Johnson from Florida State, Kingsley Enagbare from South Carolina, Nick Bonita from Oklahoma. All those guys are kind of top 50 guys. And even Boye Mafe from Minnesota. All those guys, I think, are going to be off the board somewhere in the top 50 to 60 picks, like by the end of the second round. And we say, don't wait to day 2 to draft edge. I think it's more like don't wait past the top 50 to draft edge. Like there's still got a lot of guys like a DeMarcus Lawrence, like a Jabal Sheard, who go at the top of the second round and are still very talented edge rushers. So
I think
that's where the strengths of the class is going to be.
I think a lot of that is rooted, obviously, in the production that we've seen from Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau at the top. Karlaftis also uber productive for like his entire career at Purdue, one of the few players that started as a true freshman at Purdue. But a lot of it's also they're going to meet the size thresholds, right? Like a lot of these guys are big. I remember in previous edge classes, like the Brian Burns classes, like he's got to get to this 250 number. He's got to get to this weight. All of these guys are, all these guys specifically at the top. Except for Nick Bonito.
Only
really going to pass that test, right?
Yeah.
Even Myjai Sanders of Cincinnati showed up to the Senior Bowl, clearing that 250 mark. Boye Mafe. I mean, these guys all meet those thresholds, and a lot of them have the long arms as well, 33-inch arms plus. Kingsley Enagbare, I think, reaching 34, 35. Like, there are high floor players in what they have from a size perspective, but I'm also excited about the depth of this class. Yeah. Now, I said this about linebacker, maybe I consider a day 2 linebacker knowing the depth of this class. For edge, I'm taking Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Karlaftis probably in the top 10. Yeah. I am locked in to those guys being top 10 type of players. Next up on the position rankings list in 2022.
Offensive tackle. So we got linebacker, edge, and offensive tackle. This one's a little top heavier in that Evan Neal, Charles Cross, Ikem Ekwonu, those are top 10 type of guys. Like those guys, I will blow my mind if one of them's on the board anywhere past 12. Now they're not like necessarily top 5 type of guys, any of them, but all top 10. And then you have Bernard Ryman and Trevor Penning, some Central Michigan, Northern Iowa, respectively, who are like, they're first rounders. Those guys are going in the first round, even though they're small school guys that, if they played better competition, you could talk about in the Neal Cross Ekwonu tier, but it's always a difficulty. It's like when you don't see it against top competition consistently, you don't feel as good about it. So those guys are in the mix though. And then after that, it's not great, but there are guys to be had. I mean, Daniel Faalele, Nicholas Petit-Frere from Ohio State, Abraham Lucas, Washington State, Darian Canard, even Kentucky, even though I'm probably more of a guard. But there are guys to be had throughout day 2 a little bit-ish, but like those 5 guys in the first round doesn't come around every year.
Yeah, I think I don't necessarily disagree that this is one of the top position groups, but I do think that there's an obvious cliff, right, that comes off after Evan Neal, Charles Cross, Ekwonu. Maybe you're throwing Raymond in that tier, but like after that, I could see a lot of these guys in like swing tackle roles out of the gate that maybe develop into starters, and I don't see a lot of high end maybe after Faalele, right? Like Deesh is not going to be like this freak at the next level. Kirkland, Petit-Frere, that's where my head is at least. But with Evan Neal, Cross, and Ekwonu, and I know you're higher on Raymond than some others, but with those 3 at least, you feel this opportunity for them to be elite. Mm-hmm. Like they could be Tristan Wirfs tier of like production at the next level. I think after that, you're kind of hoping for average to above average play consistently, but that's where my head's at on this class. All right, cornerback. I originally thought this would be a top 2, top 3 position group in the 22 draft, but I think similarly to tackle, there is this cliff where like you're not even considering outside corners. You know what I mean? Like there are, after the first few outside corners in this class, you get to the back end here and it's like a lot of slot guys, a lot of box slot type of players. It's specifically not strong at outside corner, and I think that's what ultimately draws the value down a bit.
Well, I just expected bigger years from guys like Kyrie Elam from Florida, Andrew Booth from Clemson, Martin Emerson from Mississippi State. Like I thought all those
Darian
guys,
Kendrick from Georgia. Like you expected these big years for sure.
I thought all those guys would solidify themselves as first rounders, and then that would be kind of a sick class. But now, kind of as it stands, it's Derek Stingley, Ahmad Gardner, Trent McDuffie, and then Gap. Like those guys. I think I said this on the last show. You want a cornerback, I would get one of those guys, and then because I feel if you want help now, solid. Exactly. Right? I feel very solidly about those 3. The rest, TBD. Mm-hmm. So that's why cornerback, like you said, I thought it was going to be a really sick class. It's still very good. Like those 3, it's kind of like the tackle class from 2 years ago with Wirfs, Thomas, Wills, Becton. I had Josh Jones up there too, but then tier. And then it's like, then you want those guys, then peace. So you want those three and then peace.
You got the three studs, Derek Stingley Jr. of LSU, Ahmad Gardner, Cincinnati, and Trent McDuffie of Washington. Then after that, I see this tier of like developmental outside corners, Kyer Elam, Andrew Booth Jr., potentially Darian Kendrick, who's just scratching inside the top 100. But then there is some depth at slot, right? And now slot, obviously, you're chasing outside cornerback talent at the top of the draft. But look at Roger McCreary, who played almost exclusively in the slot at the Senior Bowl. Jalen Petrie, Marcus Jones, even of Houston. JoJo Doman has graded well from Nebraska. Like, Daxton Hill, I didn't even mention him, but he could probably play for the slot
JoJo's
too.
more of a linebacker.
Yeah, but I do feel that there is some depth or strength in the slot, and I do think if you're going to attack slot cornerback and you can get a Jalen Petrie at the top of day 2, or even Marcus Jones maybe at the back end of day 2, I think there's going to be a lot of value there.
Yeah, see, Petrie probably going to be more of a safety. Although, like, I'd still keep him in the slot. But
let's go to the next one. I almost teased it.
Oh,
I did tease it.
Wide receiver. And I said it's not like last year's class, but I like the class a lot. I do, and I've talked about the tier 1. That's Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Jameson Williams. Kind of pick your poison there. But then I like the tier 2 of Chris Olave from Ohio State, Jahan Dotson from Penn State, Treylon Burks from Arkansas, and then Sky Moore of Western Michigan I'd even throw in there. Jalen Tolbert, kind of close to that tier. I'd probably put him a tier below in terms of how good I feel about him as a prospect. But so that tier 1 is firmly fringe top 10 to top 20. I'd take any of those guys in that range. Should even Drake London, depending on your offense, I could take him even higher. Jameson Williams, I could take even higher depending on your offense and what you want. But all those guys are in that mix. And then, like I said, all the other guys are kind of like pick 25 on. Mm-hmm. I feel fine taking any of those guys.
I think that first tier, I'd probably throw Olave in there. I'm higher on Olave than a lot of other people, but I like
he's good.
Comfortably taking him inside the top 20, I'm saying.
And he's definitely in the top. He's the top 1 of the second tier.
Yeah.
But I just think those other 3 offer like an elite skill set that could be a wide receiver 1, 1,500-yard guy. Not to say like Olave's never going to get 1,500 yards, but it's like he firmly has a kind of a wide receiver 2 skill set.
Yeah, that first 3, right? You're looking at them as guys who have wide receiver 2 floors, but wide receiver 1 potential. Yes. And then pretty much everyone after that is like high-end wide receiver 2 potential and maybe like low-end wide receiver.
With, like questions about are they going to be wide receiver 1. Like
can
we said, with Treylon Burks,
I get you.
Can he actually be an X? Has never been an X. Sky Moore, is he too small to win outside? Is he fast enough? But like, they're all good prospects.
But even after that, too, like Tolbert of South Alabama, that's another
Justin
guy.
Ross. And so the interesting guys here to me are after that then are Justin Ross from Clemson, George Pickens from Georgia. Because George Pickens, back his freshman
Trevor
year.
Sigma's wide receiver 2.
Yeah, like back his freshman year, he's kind of the Derek Stingley of the cornerback class, of the wide receiver class, excuse me. Where freshman year, if you ranked anyone else above him as a wide receiver 1, you're crazy. Like that was a sick freshman year. But then sophomore year, he had fewer yards. And his junior year, after he tore his ACL, like that, he didn't look anything like the guy he did.
And then in flashes this season, you've seen it.
No, not at all to me. Like this season, after he tore his ACL, like he just was different. He didn't look good. Even though he won that, had the deep ball against Alabama, like he just was not the same guy. And that's obviously like he had just torn his ACL. You don't expect him to be the same guy. So that's the one where it's like you're going to have to get that guy on a football field somewhere and test and have him like run routes for you to see if he can get back to that, because there's question marks about whether if he's going to or not at this point.
You don't want to move Treylon Burks higher on this list, or are you comfortable taking him in the first round? I think a lot of people feel that PFF is low on Treylon Burks.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely am. Like compared to like DJ had him 12th. Mm-hmm. I would not take him above pick like 25, honestly. I just don't think I love the physicality, the athleticism at that size, speed at that size, but he is just not loose the way AJ Brown was.
Yeah.
And DK Metcalf's probably the better comp, in my opinion, of the 2 Ole Miss wide receivers. DK ran a 4.3 at 230. Like Treylon Burks is a heck of an athlete, but he's going to run probably like a 4.4 or something at 225. Like DK was a different animal, and even still, like we've seen DK go hot and cold. Now that's not to say you would draft DK in the top 10 in retrospect, but like it's still a limited wide receiver at the NFL level.
There's only one DK.
Yeah.
DK is like a freak at 230 running a 4.3.
Yes,
If
exactly.
Burks tests like that, maybe we start to have different questions. But I think that's good analysis of Burks. But what I was saying about Olave, I'd probably put him in that tier 1, and then after that tier 2 starts with Jahan Dotson, Burks, Tolbert, Sky Moore for me as well. But all righty then. On to number 6, position group 6. This is about average, right? We're getting to the average component of the draft class here.
I think the safety class, now I'd even say it might be a little above average.
Okay.
But this safety class, Kyle Hamilton, it's kind of the outlier. It's kind of like Kyle Pitts last year in the tight end class. Like he's in his own planet here. Like it's almost like difficult to include him because he's about as good a safety prospect as we've seen. So he's up there. And then I would consider Lewis Seen from Georgia, Jaquan Brisker from Penn State, and Jalen Petrie from Baylor, all like fringe first rounders. Like if you took them at the back end of the first round, I don't bat an eye at any of those guys. So that's good, but that's a good deal of talent, but that's kind of it then. Like you get one of those 4 guys that I just said, or you may not be getting a great safety at that point. So that's kind of the class runs about 4 deep here at safety that are guys I would really want and think can make an impact soon. Kirby Joseph, kind of the wild card from Illinois, had a little bit of an up and down Senior Bowl. Didn't like turn heads, I'd say, but like his build and his ball skills are very good. That there's a lot to work with him.
Do you feel that I wanted Brandon Smith in this class, and then he transfers to Notre Dame? Not Brandon Smith.
Yes.
Brandon Joseph.
Yes.
Wanted Brandon Joseph in this class, and I thought that'd be high. Why do you feel? I think we were higher on Brisker in season than we are now. Brisker has kind of fallen at the top of, right at the back end of the.
That's always where he's been.
Really?
Yeah. He's always been like 25 to 40 range. I don't even know if he cracked top 30 at any point, but that's like, he's just a very solid safety. I don't think he goes.
I'd be stoked at getting Brisker at the top of the day too.
Yeah.
I like Brisker a lot as a football player. All right, let's get to the next one.
Tight end. And I've heard a lot about this tight end class being good. I don't see it. I mean, there's a lot of guys you can plug in. I don't see a single like difference maker.
It's not good for what people want at the tight end position
Exactly.
now, right?
Yeah, I think that's the whole thing. It's like you can find a lot of, I'm trying to think of the right thing to say here. You can find a lot of like Dalton Keens in this class. Guys who are moderately athletic, good enough ball skills, you can see the football field with. But you're never expecting them to get more than 800 yards in a season. I think Trey McBride's the only one in this class that I would ever place a bet on to get more than 800 yards in a season. Like basically just ever become a feature guy at the tight end position. I don't see the athleticism and the movement skills with these other dudes.
In terms of pure pass catchers, right? Throw blocking out the window.
Yeah.
Is it right to look at McBride, Weidermeyer, and then maybe Coastal Carolina's Isaiah Likely as
I didn't
guys?
even put Likely above Weidermeyer.
Okay.
Weidermeyer's he's going to be slow. And this past year, he kind of mailed it in as a blocker. Like he's not going to go that. I'd be floored if he runs faster than a 4.75, and I'd be floored if he goes higher than the 3rd round, or even fall to day 3.
And I've seen Colorado State's Trey McBride, who was awesome at the Senior Bowl. Like there's a lot of reason to like Trey McBride as the top tight end in this class. I've seen him mocked at the back end of the first round, like 32 to the Lions. Like that's just not going to happen for me, right? I'd rather have really any of these guys.
Dog. Yeah,
it's a no for me, dog. I'd rather have any of these guys, Rucker, Weidermeyer, Isaiah Likely on day 2, day 3, even than taking Trey McBride. And that's not to say he's a bad football player. So you factor in the value of the position and just how much he's not going to elevate above, what other
I think the only guy I would even, the only guy who, if I had to pick on day 2, that I would even consider is Trey McBride. I would not consider anyone else before day 3.
That's fair.
Just because
that's fair.
The juice ain't worth the squeeze at the position.
No, I get you. All right, close us out. We got more left.
All right, we have interior offensive lines next. And this might be a little low on interior offensive line because honestly, I obviously love Linderbaum at center position, Iowa center. I really like Kenyon Green, from Texas A&M. And I think Zion Johnson's a stay one starting guard. But I just don't think the depth's there. So I like those 3. After that, I'm not sure there's like a guy I feel great about ever really being a starting
I thought we saw flashes from Dylan Parham, the Memphis guard at the Senior Bowl. Marcus Hayes had some good reps, right? But none of them were legit standing out above the rest there. Zion Johnson was the only one where you felt like, okay, this is obvious that he's going to be like a firm start.
And I think Ed Ingram from LSU and Jamari Salyer from Georgia had good Senior Bowls. But again, not to the point where, like I said, those guys are back end of day 2. After those top 3 guys is where I'm starting to consider this interior offensive line class.
Are you going to consider ultimately Darian Canard in this interior offensive line class, or will he stick it out tackle for you on the board?
I think he's going to have to be a guard at the next level. So, yeah.
So where would you slot him in this group? Where is he at right now for you?
That's a good question. I think he's right behind, I'd say probably right behind Dylan Parham. Probably interior offensive line 5 at the moment.
Gotcha. The next position group is running back. We haven't had a good running back class in a while. I don't think we've seen this ranked considerably high in a while.
Yeah, and so we're going to do a generational running back bracket here a little bit later. But yeah, it just doesn't have a lot of dynamic guys. Like, the only guy I really want in this class is Kenneth Walker. And now, it really blows my mind that he's not getting first-round hype. Like, if you just look at him versus Najee Harris as a prospect, I think Kenneth Walker's better.
Yeah.
Like, not to shit on Najee Harris, but like Kenneth Walker has speed and power and is younger.
Proven broken tackle.
And like did it behind not no offensive line, but like did it kind of a lot on his own against good competition. I don't know. There's just a lot to like about Kenneth Walker. I think he's a very good prospect, and
he didn't go to Bama. Did you factor that in?
Therein lies the problem of running back evaluations and why you get Clyde Edwards-Helaire going in the first round. Because when a guy's in an optimal situation for him, they look better. Oh, as it's always been, like as we've said for years.
At the NFL level.
At the NFL level. But it applies to college too, and it sways your evaluation on guys. Whereas Kenneth Walker running behind, objectively worse offensive line than what Bama was throwing out the last 2 years, putting up similar, if not better numbers.
He was in the Heisman conversation after that Michigan game.
And it's like, I don't really get it.
I think that's a fair push. I think pushing. I mean, I don't think you would either take Kenneth Walker in the first round just purely from a position value perspective. But the fact that other media outlets,
not getting talked about that way, especially in a weak class.
That makes sense.
So,
of these guys that you can take on, day 2, day 3, some guys that excite me. I really like Jerrion Ely from Ole Miss.
Okay.
He's a really small back, but I think him getting a Jerrion Ely type on day 3, knowing the athletic ability that he has and like what he offers in the passing game, I really do think Jerrion Ely is going to be one of my guys on day 3. And I think that's what you kind of have to do with the running back position, especially working here at PFF. You're never going to say hey, this is my guy, I'm taking him inside the top 50, right? Like your guys are going to be guys that are going to be available late day 2, early day 3 that can offer just a different type, right? Like that's what I want from my running back, similar to what San Francisco does, like bringing in speed, bring athletes, and just making this committee. I mean, I don't think we're going to see how many 300 carry backs do you think we're going to see in 5 years? I don't know. I just don't think they're going to be a lot. The trend continues to slow down. So
the one back in this class I like that's probably going to go later on is Zonovan Knight from North Carolina State. I'm very curious to see how he tests because I think he's going to test very well and could then be a quote unquote riser post combine.
What a brutal scene for this next. So I'm going to go ahead and say it. Quarterback. You have quarterback second to last among the positions here in the 22 NFL draft. I know we've talked about this quarterback class probably too much at this point on this podcast, talking about how it's just not not in the tier of previous quarterback classes, but I guess this does put a final exclamation point on how bad this class is.
The thing is, though, just because it's bad doesn't mean there's no talent to be had. But also the thing is, this is going to be the lowest we've ranked a quarterback on our draft board, QB1, our draft board, since we started doing this. There hasn't been a year, I don't think, that we didn't have a quarterback at number 1. Actually, it was the Trubisky year. That was the only year we didn't have a quarterback top of the draft board, number 1 overall player. Every other year we said, Jared Goff, whether Jameis Winston, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence. Every single year, besides Trubisky and then this one. So, yeah, it's like I said, there's not complete breadth of talent, but it's the worst QB1 that we've seen.
You hate to see it. And there's not even a lot of depth in this class either.
There's 6 guys. No, 5 guys. 5 guys. 6 guys. 6 guys.
6 guys that you'd even draft?
6 guys that you could feasibly think could start at some point.
Damn.
Bailey Zappi, I just think he's a nice backup that maybe taking the 4th, 5th.
Taken for the story? That's undermining him quite a bit. But all right, defensive tackle, last position group here.
Here we go. Defensive tackle. Although it's kind of grown on me that there is some dudes, it's still a weak class in my opinion. Devontae Wyatt is going to be DT1. George defensive tackle. Jordan Davis going to be DT2. Those guys, you feel good about them starting. After that, like Logan Hall from Houston did not have a great Senior Bowl, is undersized, serious question marks. Travis Jones from UConn, good prospect, nose tackle only though, like 2-down guy. Fedarian Mathis, Pierre Winfrey, the Alabama and Oklahoma defensive tackles respectively are probably like the last two that I'm thinking are plug-and-play starters. So that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys that I would draft and throw to the Wolves day one. That's tough, you know.
Yeah. Do you? I remember you mentioned at the top. Do you think there's a reason for the trend of some bad defensive tackle classes of late?
I don't know. It's not a sexy position. Not getting in vogue. College is going more 3-down stuff. So they're not even using. I think that's probably
every position also getting lighter, right?
Yeah.
Like every position also getting lighter. These guys who were maybe playing defensive tackle a few years ago are trying to cut down to play like a 260 edge type.
Yeah, you have guys like Logan Hall who are 270 playing on the inside or doing stuff that, like I said, the 3-down, tight fronts, whatever, aren't grooming your 315-pound nose tackles. They're grooming 270-pound edge hybrids, kind of.
What's interesting, too, is you're not necessarily seeing, for interior offensive linemen, like lighter weight coveted. You're looking for those guys to clear the 300, 320-pound marks. Whereas for defensive tackle, like these guys are trying to cut to try and get more speed and all that stuff, which I think it's going to be an interesting trend to follow. Before we get to the generational running back prospect bracket, some shout outs to our sponsors. The Tailgate podcast is sponsored by Western Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western Southern helps advise your money moves. Buying your first home, planning to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow? Western Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Team up to understand needs and address goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started with the westernsouthern.com/PFF. Also, go to PFF.com now through the Super Bowl. Get 25% off any PFF subscription. Use promo code SUPER25. That's promo code SUPER25 for everything that Mike Renner writes, including the draft guide. You love to see it. Generational running back prospect bracket. You approached me with this segment idea. I didn't completely understand it at first. Please let the Gators listeners know.
Okay, so as the Gators probably know, we started grading in 2014.
We need. Can we pause?
Yeah.
Can we ask the listeners if they like the Gators?
Yeah.
We've rolled with the Gators for too long. We need to. I'm saying it right now. We're trying to create some new merch. We're close to making Gators merch. Now, before we press that button, please submit via Twitter DM, IG DM, or however you can contact us. YouTube comment what you feel like is a better name for people who listen to this podcast. If you even feel like there's a name. I don't hate podcast listeners with no name. Like, it doesn't have to be this fucking weird ass thing. It could also be just like, I listen to that podcast.
There's gotta be a unifying mantra.
Maybe. Anyway, if you submit a better name.
I had multiple Gators at the Senior Bowl come up to me and say they were Gators.
I've had multiple people come up to me and say they're Gators too. I don't know if they're that proud of it though. I want people to be proud of the name. I want tattoos, baby. But please submit your naming of the audience. Either YouTube comment, Twitter DM, or on IG DMs. All of those are open for the boys and for the ladies.
Best suggestion gets whatever merch we create.
Yes, I'm gonna get $50 worth of new X audience name merch sent to you directly if you come up with the best name. You love to see that. All right, generational running back prospect bracket for the Gators for now.
Gators for now. So we started 2014 college grading, which have we ever told the story like it was just Neil came to us like a week before college started that year and it's like, hey, we're going to grade college.
No, we didn't. Not a week before.
It was in August.
Wasn't it Chris's idea originally?
And so it was. So Chris bought the company in February of 2015, August of 2015, or was it 14? It was 14. February 2014, August 2014, we started grading college football.
That's insane.
Yes.
And that first year of grading had to have been bunk.
Grind. We didn't actually even finish. So it says like 2 weeks before, and we had no infrastructure in place in like how to record games. We missed a lot of games with like bad recordings and just like didn't know how to find them after that.
Because you guys weren't selling to college teams yet either.
We weren't selling to anybody. It was just like a proof of concept to show that we could do it to teams to then get more funding for it. And so we don't finish that year until February, until like the Super Bowl, even like grading all of college. It was a grind. But now we have 8 years of college football
That's
grading
sick.
in the books.
That's sick.
So we're going to take the top prospect from every year. We have 11 positional groups to go from now until the draft. We're going to take the top prospect from every single year of those, match them up against each other in chronological order. So the most recent being, as I'll just say it, a running back is going to be Kenneth Walker.
Yeah.
Our very first RB1 back in 2015 draft was Todd Gurley. Going to go head-to-head, debating who's the better prospect to then crown the generational running back prospect in the PFF era.
Love that. So that way there's not just like 6, right? Because every year there's like a generational.
Yes.
I get you.
Yes.
I get you.
So we have to crown who was the generational running back prospect of the PFF era.
I'm
So to
excited
break
about
it down, by year, 2015, go back, it was Todd Gurley. 2016 was Ezekiel Elliott coming out of Ohio State. 2017, we had a little bit of a different one here. That was the McCaffrey Fournette draft, but we had Dalvin Cook as RB1 in 2017. I think we've been proven somewhat correct on that one. McCaffrey's been great, but Dalvin Cook also been great. So I think we've been proving at least like to not be dead wrong about having Dalvin Cook as RB1 in that class. Now he fell in the second round because of off-field, whatever. But Saquon Barkley in 2018 was RB1. Not your boy. Sorry.
Not Rashad?
I wanted Rashad to get more love in that class. Josh Jacobs in 2019 was our RB1. DeAndre Swift in 2020, RB1. Javonte Williams in 2021.
Swift wasn't the consensus RB1 in that class.
No, that one was all over the map in terms of RB1. Obviously, Clyde Edwards-Helaire goes RB1. Has not been RB1. Jonathan Taylor has been RB1.
He's barely been a RB1.
Yeah,
he barely Jerick McKinnon looks better than Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now, which is hateful to see.
Ugh. But so there is your RB1s going head-to-head. Let's kick off the bracket.
All right. 1 to 8. We got to go to the 1 to 8 matchup.
So the 1 to 8 matchup is Todd Gurley versus Kenneth Walker.
I'm excluding his NFL career because obviously I didn't like, but like, Gurley is obviously
the better prospect.
Now I will say this, in the Gurley class, I did like Melvin Gordon a lot.
Yeah, that was a tough
Melvin
one.
Gordon fan.
So those guys were right. We didn't actually put out a board, but we did a mock draft, and in the mock draft, Todd Gurley went 1.
Oh, really?
So that was when Matt Clausen, shout out to Matt Clausen, who is a grader at PFF, former D3 running back at, I can't remember exactly the school, but he did our running back scouting. Obviously, he played running back in college, so he did our running back scouting that year, and he had Gurley with the slight edge.
Nice.
But Todd Gurley...
I won't say, obviously, you could say that Melvin Gordon has panned out to be a better pro because he's played longer, but like Gurley's peak was insane. Yeah,
I mean, Gurley was a good prospect for damn sure. Like, he 4.52 at like 222 pounds. He was a load to bring down coming out of Georgia. He returned kicks for them. He had that kick return against Bama. So,
Oh, my God. The Gurley college tape was lit.
I love Kenneth Walker, but I think I will lean Todd Gurley there as well.
A side note on that, you mentioned former PFF graders, and I know we've mentioned this guy on the podcast before, but Bobby Slowick.
Yes.
Did you know he was on that 2013 Washington coaching staff?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, he coached outside linebackers.
I know.
Coached
Yeah,
Ryan
I was looking at it to make. I made a
Brian
joke on
Rampa.
Twitter about Lovie Smith, and I was looking on it to see like who else was on there, and I saw Bobby Slowick.
That's how. So he got booted. Obviously, that whole staff then got dissolved after that year because they went 3-13, and they all landed on their feet. Bobby Slowick went to PFF. That's how he came to PFF.
Oh, really?
Right after that. So
from that year? Okay.
Yeah, from that year.
Awesome. I joined PFF in 2017, and it was like a couple years in you guys grading college, and I was like thinking it was the coolest fucking thing in the world. I got Rashad Penny for his tackle stats. It was sick.
I mean, it was the coolest thing in the world.
All right, let's go to 2 to 7.
All right, 2 to 7. Zeke back in 2016 versus Javonte this past year.
This is where I am going to lean again to the older prospect. I'm going Zeke. Zeke was
sick.
Insane.
Yeah.
That Ohio State team was insane. I mean, with him included. I mean, he was insane in that class. I know Javonte Williams was great, but I don't think anyone was consistently mocking him in like the top 4 like Zeke was.
Yeah, Zeke went, and Zeke came out 225 pounds and ran a 4.47.
Wow.
At that size. And Javonte was like a 4.61.
Jonathan Taylor ran a 4.39 at that size.
Yeah. Should have been higher than Jonathan Taylor, let's be real. But Zeke was great in pass protection, great in the passing game. Like, he was a complete NFL running back. Still is. He's just not quite, gained some weight. Straight up, dude, gained some weight. Yeah. Like, he's bigger than he was. Like, that legit robbed him of a few good years there. All right. Next one here, bumping up to the 2017 draft versus the 2020 draft. That's Dalvin Cook versus DeAndre
This feels like
Swift.
another obvious answer. Saquon Barkley was different.
We're going Dalvin Cook versus DeAndre Swift.
Oh, I thought you said.
A word I said.
No, I'm sorry. I thought I heard you say Saquon versus Jacobs. Dalvin Cook versus DeAndre Swift. I think this is obvious as well, though. Dalvin Cook.
I know we're really leaning towards all the old backs, but I do think those were. But
also, wasn't Swift the Jonathan Taylor class?
Yeah, he was.
Would you have put Taylor over Cook if he was?
No. Cook was Cook might win that. I like him coming out, his tape back at Florida State. That year, they had, I believe, it was either the lowest or the second lowest graded run blocking in the Power 5 of any Power 5 offensive line. And he broke the most tackles in college football. And I think that was his sophomore year, actually. That wasn't even his final year at Florida State. Like he had some insane explosiveness, cutting ability. Now, he had some of the weirdest testing I can remember. Only ran a 4.49 when people were predicting like 4.3s from coming out of Florida State. But I think in the NFL, it's been proven that he's pretty damn fast enough still.
Yeah.
Dude, at Florida State, it was sophomore
His
year,
40 time
2015.
screws up a lot of people's perception of its importance, right? Like, Dalvin Cook ran this. It's like, no, he was definitely hurt for that.
2015, he averaged 7.4 yards per carry with 19 touchdowns on 229 carries, 1,696 yards, 4 yards per after contact per attempt, behind one of the worst run blocking lines in college football. Like, that guy you just knew didn't matter where he went. He was going to light it up in the NFL.
And DeAndre's, I mean, at the time,
Swift was a great receiver coming out, and has not.
But at the
been
time, though, we
utilized
were
as
pretty
such.
low on that running back class overall, right?
Yes,
I mean,
like
there were a
in
lot of
terms
different RB1s, not a big consensus there. Like, these other guys that have won so far, Gurley, Zeke, Cook, I mean, we're among these, like, consensus top 10 players.
I think we just said, like, we'll take the last one of, it was DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, Antonio Gibson. We're just like, we'll take whichever one's last of those guys. And they all went high, but none went super high. All right. Last of the first round matchups. Saquon Barkley against Josh Jacobs. We can sprint in the card here.
Yeah.
I think Josh Jacobs was probably the weakest RB1 of the RB1 season.
Even over
here.
Swift, really?
I think so.
Okay.
Honestly, his biggest selling point to me was he was had very natural hands as a receiver, but he was just limited in his speed and explosiveness, that guy. So
there were concerns with Saquon coming out, though. I remember late in the process, people were talking about him trying to make a home run out of every run and bouncing things out all the time. And you've seen a lot of that with the Giants. So I'm not saying he wasn't a generational prospect. Everyone had him as a top 5 player in that class, but still, there were some writing on the wall for some of the concerns you see in the NFL now. No one saw the injury plague that has hit for Saquon Barkley.
I mean,
it was rare. He did not have any injury tags.
Like that. Like, you can't chalk up him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you were low on his vision or whatever, that's not why he was rough this last year. It was because he tore his ACL.
All right, shall we go?
Yeah, Todd Gurley, second round matchup here. Todd Gurley versus Saquon Barkley. Your 1 versus your 4.
I think I lean Saquon because Gurley did have the knee injury flags. Remember, that was a big reason why people were souring on Gurley in general.
Yeah.
I like
Saquon was quite comfortably the better prospect in my opinion, just more explosive and for a lot of reasons. And Zeke versus Dalvin Cook. This one's a real debate for me. This one, I lean Dalvin Cook, honestly, just because of type. I know Saquon or Zeke ran the faster 40, but Dalvin was the better home run threat. Like, this guy had insane explosiveness. He had.
I think the 40 could have clouded people's judgment to a point where if you looked at consensus ranking for Zeke versus consensus rankings for Cook, Zeke was better prospect purely from where he landed on the consensus big board. But if Dalvin Cook actually shows what we think he is at that combine, I think more people are talking about Dalvin Cook as the running back 1 in that class, and honestly, the more generational player over Zeke.
Yeah, and the bigger thing with Cook was off field.
Yeah.
And so I really don't want to factor that into this because it's like we're talking about talent here. I think Cook was the more talented running back coming out, prospect.
Fair.
Are we willing to go Cook?
I'm willing to go Cook with you.
Going Cook versus, so it's Cook versus Saquon.
It's Saquon.
To me, it's still Saquon.
It's got to be. Got to be. There was never, I don't think we'll ever talk about, I mean, this guy was getting AP, Barry Sanders, combo comps.
Yeah.
They were Saquon Barkley might be God.
It's if 2 Hall of Famers were better, they'd be Saquon.
Exactly. Yeah. And they couldn't get hurt. They were talking about this guy that literally could not miss.
Yeah.
Dave Gettleman right after he drafted him was this is.
It gave him the sort of cover.
Yeah.
To go with one of the craziest positional value takes of all time.
Brutal scene. Gettleman. R.I.P. You hate to see it.
But yeah, this one I do feel.
That's a fun.
Saquon reigns supreme. So there's your bracket. Saquon versus Cook. Saquon runs out, and your the official generation, because I think an NFL generation is about 8 years.
We should get social to make it
That's how long
graphics.
a full career in the NFL lasts. 8 years, your generational running back prospect is Saquon Barkley.
I think we should get social to make a graphic.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of lit.
Let's do it.
A little tailgate action. Get on it. Stone. He just says thumbs up. All right. Now on to the interviews with USC head coach Lincoln Riley and NC State's Ikem Ekwonu. Now joining the Tailgate podcast is USC head coach Lincoln Riley. Great to have you on the show, man. And where I'd like to start is you've been at USC 2 to 3 months now, enjoying the sunny and 75 weather. How has it been so far?
Like you said, yeah. I told somebody earlier, it's almost like being on vacation that never ends. It's a little hard to believe that this is where we live now, but it's been great. It has. The community's been great, very welcoming to us. Our staff, it's been great, obviously getting around the university and getting around the players, and just excited for every step of this.
So me being a Notre Dame guy, very excited to have you on, infuse some youth and some sort of energy into this rivalry that had kind of been one-sided the past handful of years with Marcus Freeman now at Notre Dame as well. I just had one question, though, about that. Why do you think USC is scared to play in South Bend in November?
No, if we have been, we're not anymore.
Okay, good. Hey, Gayle, I love it. You heard it here first.
I want to focus a little bit on your staff as well. I think you've talked about it in multiple interviews, just how important they are to the success at USC. You brought a couple guys over, Dennis Simmons and Alec Grinch. I guess speak to how critical they are being a part of this kind of rebirth at USC, something that you're looking to change.
Yeah, no, those were a couple of the guys that just wasn't going to do this without them. I mean, just plain and simple. Coach Simmons is, one of my closest confidants, both on and off the field. Our assistant head coach does so much within the program, and just a difference maker for us in every sense. And then, Coach Grinch obviously was able to bring him over from Ohio State 3 years ago, and he did a phenomenal job spearheading the change defensively for us at Oklahoma, and the obvious. The changes in production, I mean, NFL picks, in any way that you can define it, there was obvious improvement and really drastic improvement. And so excited to see what he'll be able to do defensively, and our staff will be able to do defensively with the roster we feel like we can assemble here. So two guys that are some of the very best at their positions in the country, and also two guys that were dying to be here at USC with us.
Yeah, so you obviously come over from Oklahoma to here. At Oklahoma, mainly recruiting Texas, Oklahoma, Midwest sort of area here, but dabbled somewhat in Southern California. What is the difference walking into a recruit's house down here in SoCal or anywhere in California with USC on your chest versus with Oklahoma on your chest, and the reception that you kind of get from these recruits?
Yeah, no, it's you could tell that USC just hits a little bit different with people in this area. I mean, there's no question about it, and I think on top of it, there's just such a hunger in this area, and I think an excitement for everyone. Even obviously, a lot of people around here are USC fans, and are very invested in what's going on. But even people that maybe aren't a diehard USC fan or not an alumni, I think most people still want to see this program back to where it can be, because I think like football in the West, I think college football in general is much better when USC is playing at a high level. And so I think there's just a genuine excitement across the country to see that happen again.
And to add to that, right, USC has been this big program in college football for so long. It's been sunny and 75 down here for a long time, but they haven't had the success that maybe people expect in the Pac-12. You have this staff, you have this credibility coming from Oklahoma, a very successful trip at Oklahoma. But I guess what's going to be the biggest difference in your approach here at USC compared to maybe previous regimes that's going to get it back on track to being this powerhouse that everyone expects it to be?
It's just, you build it. I mean, it's a step-by-step process. I mean, I think the thing for us coming in here is we have a plan. We have a plan, and we know it works. I mean, we know what a really, really, really elite program looks like, feels like, how it operates. Now, does that mean we've got it all figured out? Does that mean we won't continue to get better? Absolutely not. The game is a constant evolution. But I think you've got a lot of guys coming in, and not just the guys that came in from Oklahoma. I mean, if you looked at the rest of our staff, I mean, we hired the D-line coach from Michigan, Sean Nua, who obviously they had a phenomenal year, won the Big Ten, went to the playoff. Hired running back coach Kyle McDonald from Utah. Obviously, they had a tremendous year, won the league, went to the Rose Bowl. So a lot of the hires that we made, even outside of the group that we brought from Oklahoma, were guys that have won, that have experienced this at a high level, and we want our players to feel that. We want them to feel every single day what it feels like to be a championship level program. And I think once you do that, it becomes habit, it becomes second nature, and that's when you've got some real staying power.
Another coach to add to that list that you mentioned, guys that you're bringing over, Josh Henson, coming over from Texas A&M to be the offensive coordinator, offensive line coach. I guess speak to the successes that he had and how excited you are to have him on the staff.
Yeah, no, he was a part of a really nice turnaround there at Texas A&M, and even before his time at A&M, I mean, pretty highly regarded guy in terms of the work he's done at LSU, at Oklahoma State, at Missouri. Guy's one of the best offensive line coaches in the country, and no question about it. And again, he kind of fits the mold. You see, high-level coaches from championship-level programs. But again, all these guys were dying to be here. None of these guys were looking for a job. Mm-hmm. These guys all saw what I saw here, which is the makings of one of the best college football programs in the country and all the things that you could possibly need to get that done. So I think I can promise you there's a genuine excitement among the entire staff about where this thing is headed.
So one of the biggest storylines in college football right now is the transfer portal and all that comes along with it. You guys have obviously been active in that already. How do you divide or prioritize your time between the transfer portal and recruiting those type of guys and high school recruiting and getting guys in that regard, how everyone kind of has recruited for years now?
I mean, I just think they're all different tools now to build your roster, and you have to use the tools that the rules allow you to use. Yeah. And for us right now, when we're trying to change a decent sized portion of this roster, it's been a very advantageous tool. It has. It's really helped us add some high level players, some guys that have college experience, to where when you think about if you didn't have the transfer portal, we come in here, a couple of weeks before the first signing day. There had been the staff had been in transition for a long time now. You've only got, a handful of guys committed out of high school. I mean, how are you going to go, all of a sudden just go grab a bunch of high school guys, some maybe that you didn't know or you haven't seen. It wouldn't be as good a recipe as I think what we're doing right now. So we're going to mix it. I think we'll take, certainly we'll take more transfers probably early on in our time here than maybe what we will later. We certainly want to get back to a much more, I don't want to say it's going to be 50-50, but certainly a much more balanced approach, because obviously recruiting the high schools with the advantages that we have here, being right here in Southern California, right in the heart of Los Angeles, we know what we're going to be able to get there as time goes on. And so that's, I think that part will always be the foundation of it. But right now the transfer portal helps us build it a little bit quicker. A
big transfer coming to USC. I'm sure you had 1,000 questions about him, but it is the Heisman favorite, Caleb Williams. Don't speak to the recruiting process and all that stuff. I'd love to hear what your opinion of him as a player, right, and how critical he is going to be a part of this turnaround.
Caleb's a good player. He is. He's obviously have some experience together, and I think for us, coming in, he makes that quarterback room. He makes that room certainly much stronger. Getting him in there with a couple of our guys, and that the strength of that room is obviously critically important to the success of your team. And so I think he's been a great addition. And so I, as a player, certainly improved a lot throughout the year. Last year was thrown in some unique situations for a true freshman, and I thought really responded well. And I think for him, it's going to be about just continuing to grow. There's a lot to build on, a lot to like, but still so many things that this guy can do better as he matures as a player, as he continues to mature as a leader. Continues to see different challenges defensively, learns our system better and better. There's just he has a really good skill set, and the sky's the limit. But there's a lot of work to be done, and I know he's excited, as we all are, to get a chance to kind of continue our journey together.
I want to ask you about a couple prospects from Oklahoma, a couple guys you coached that are on the defensive side of the ball. I haven't had a ton of top defensive talent come out of Oklahoma in recent years, but Nick Bonito, the edge rusher, Perry Winfrey, the defensive tackle. How good are those guys in kind of the history of defensive players you've coached, throughout the years, Oklahoma, East Carolina, wherever?
Yeah, no, those guys were definitely part of our front at OU the last few years, becoming one of the most productive fronts in the country and a big part of our defensive turnaround. So now they're very talented players. Perry came to us as a junior college player and really improved throughout his 2 seasons with us. He's very disruptive, naturally extremely violent with his hands. He has really good get off. He can anticipate and really explode, really use his hips well. And he's a very tough matchup one-on-one, and so created a lot of havoc. And I thought this year finished more plays better than he did his first year. That was kind of our big point for him, was he was in position to make a lot of plays year one. made a lot but left too many on the table, and we thought this year really turned into a much more complete player. So obviously he had a tremendous Senior Bowl the other day. Was really proud of him. Nick Bonito is a very talented edge rusher, extremely gifted, can really bend. Another guy that has great get off, has one of the best speed rushes, and then uses a lot of different counters off of that. But the speed rush is certainly his fastball. And then I think improved a lot of becoming a more versatile player as time went on, of defending the run game, being able to hold up against big offensive tackles or tight ends, down blocks, all of that, which made him a more effective player for us as well. So excited to see those guys do well and get their opportunity at the next level.
So you're obviously known as like an offensive mind. That's how you came up. But to scheme good offense, you have to know defenses and like basically how to beat the rules. So how much do you have your hands in the defensive side of the ball as the head coach? Or do you kind of leave that up to your defensive coordinator?
Well, I've got a lot of trust in Alex Grinch and our defensive staff. I certainly spend more time with the offense than I do the defense. No question about that. But absolutely, you do. I mean, I think there's obviously you're studying the film, you're watching it with the guys, you're talking. Alex and I have a lot of conversations through the years about just scheme in general and talking about it from both different perspectives and how we can be better, how we can create advantages on either side of the ball. So I would say certainly more of a supervisory type role. Ultimately, I know I'm responsible for it, but I also have guys in there that I certainly trust and delegate a lot of that to.
I wanted to also ask, you said you have this plan at USC, how you're going to turn it around. I guess what are going to be some of the principal components of this culture change at USC? And we brought up Williams, and how important is he going to be, like this vocal leader, this guy that's going to be leading the pack? You've had an opportunity to work with him at such a young age, leading the pack and what this new culture will look like at USC.
Well, I mean, you've been asked the question a lot, like, how do you change a culture? I mean, it's a long answer. I mean, you change it with every decision you make and every action and everything that you do every single day. I mean, it's got to become who you are as a program, and it's from the initial plan of what do we do to how we do it, to the coaches kind of living their lives and kind of showing the players the way, the players taking that over. But there's not one thing we do, there's not one decision we make that's not with that in mind. And I think, again, as time goes through, it becomes a standard. It just becomes the norm. And that's you're fighting now that everything that feels different and feels like change, and you want it to eventually feel like that's just what we do. And so it's a process to get to that point. But like I said, luckily we've got a staff full of guys that have a great idea of what that looks like. We brought in a number of players that are excited to be a part of it. And then I would say this, I think a big part of it is a lot of the players that we retained, because a lot of those guys wanted to be here. They wanted to be part of the turnaround, and they're certainly as key to this as anybody is. So it's going to take the whole group coming together under kind of one common goal here, and that's to get this program back. It's going to take the whole group coming together to get that done.
So this was a topic of conversation during the NFL playoffs with the Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb having only one catch in their loss. You're a former wide receiver. But when you have a guy like CeeDee Lamb, when you have a top-tier talent on the edge, or maybe even at running back, anywhere offensively, how do you balance, trying to scheme guys open versus basically just saying, my guy's better than your guy, I'm going to let him, get open, more ISO routes to let him cook, basically know you have that inbuilt advantage?
Yeah, I mean, that's why you recruit so hard. That's why you develop so hard, because you want to create advantages on the field, and the more advantages that you have, the more things that you can do to take advantage of them. Or the flip side of that is the more things the opposite side of the ball has to do to account for them, and then it opens up so many other things. So I think it's no, you certainly want to have, if you had a choice, you certainly want to have more like that than you don't. But yeah, I think there's obviously a feel. I mean, I think most football systems in general have core principles that they're going to stick to, and then you're going to game plan. And again, whether it's something you think you can take an advantage of scheme wise, or a certain player that you can. I mean, how much do you do it? How much do you not? I mean, that's kind of the fun in it, and that's the beauty in it. But I think certainly when you've got an outstanding player, it's you've got to use that to your advantage. You don't always have, not every single year you're going to have just an elite guy that's going to be, probably better than anybody you play. And when you do, I think you gotta let that horse run.
Last question for you, Coach, and we'll let you go. Really appreciate the time. We're obviously here in Los Angeles for Super Bowl 56. Have you had a lot of opportunities to watch these teams? And if so, who are some of the players that you've been most impressed with? And if you're ready to commit to it, a Super Bowl pick, who you think is going to win?
I've watched a little bit of the playoffs here towards the end. There's several guys, close to. I mean, obviously the Bengals backfield is pretty littered with our guys. So, and even Joe, we were one of Joe's, if not his first Division I offer when I was at East Carolina. Wow. So I got to know him and his family a little bit through that. So it's been really fun to see all the success that he's had. So we've got. And obviously the Samaje P. Ryan, Joe Mixon, it's been great to see those guys as well playing at such a high level. That group's got a interesting vibe about them right now. I'd be a little nervous picking against them, to be honest. But I feel like kind of a win-win. I could see some of our guys win it or see our hometown Rams take it home. Mm-hmm. Either way would be fantastic. Rams obviously are playing at a high level. Stafford's playing extremely confident right now. Cup is amazing. I think that's guys like that you dream of coaching, or kind of makes you reminisce of guys you've had kind of like that are just seem to get the absolute most out of who they are. So should be a great game. The playoffs have not disappointed up to this point.
Coach, really appreciate your time. Thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now joining the Tailgate podcast is NC State's Ikem Ekwonu. We've had you on before, but it was Zoom. Now we got you in person, live in LA. First time you've ever been out in Los Angeles. You had Thai food last night. How was that?
Delicious. Delicious, yeah. I had to get the Thai food on the DoorDash. Just trying all the different LA restaurants, seeing what's out there. So
yeah, you got to, man. West Coast has the best food. And you're training with Sport Academy out here. How has that been? I know you're working with Aiden Hutchinson, Boye Mafe. How's that training been so far?
Yeah, it's been great. We got a great group of guys there, about 7 of us. We just really push each other every day. We work hard. It's just nice, I feel like we built a really great culture there, and it's just nice getting after it with those guys for sure.
Have you been able to do any one-on-ones with those guys? I'm sure you're not doing a ton of pads or anything, but have you gotten one-on-one maybe in in your room or whatever? What you been doing?
Yeah, before the Senior Bowl, me and Otito, UCLA, D tackle, me and Otito were getting right. I was giving him looks. I feel like it really showed, especially in some of those one-on-one pass rush tapes if you watch the film. So yeah, just anywhere I can, anytime I can help, anytime I can go against, the best of the best, I'm gonna do it for sure.
It's crazy to even think about, like, you're in a room with, or in training with Aiden Hutchinson, yourself, Boye Mafe. How often are you guys talking ball, right? Are you watching tape together all the time? Yeah.
All the time, yeah. Me and Coach Ramson, the O-line coach I'm working with, O-line D-line coach I'm working with. Yeah, we're in the film room. Me, Aiden, Boye, Tito, Bam, Mecca, everyone. We're in the film room just kind of comparing film, comparing tape. Just on the board all the time. Aiden will right up in front, and I'll right up the offense of how we're going to try and stop it. So it's definitely a back and forth, and it's definitely going to make us better.
Some big news I know was sent to you by your mom. You had Dane Brugler of The Athletic showing that you were the #1 overall pick in a mock draft. How crazy was it to see that?
Yeah, it was crazy. It's something that you dream of, something that you can help but be excited for, and yeah, it's definitely nice to get that recognition for sure. Bring some of that hype up to NC State.
Some of the best conversations in this draft so far, for me at least, have been this offensive tackle class, right? It's loaded with talent.
Mm-hmm.
Charles Cross in Mississippi State, Ikem Ekwonu, NC State. There's so much talent. Evan Neal, Alabama. Mm-hmm. Have you had opportunities to talk to those guys at all? And I guess, what do you feel separates you from these other guys in this group?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to talk to them because they're training down in Dallas, but I definitely had some conversation with them, at the combine, kind of just talk about technique, talk about ball. Anytime you got all those offensive linemen in the room, it's always going to be positive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just feel like, I feel like my athleticism and my physicality and my IQ for the game, I feel like kind of separates me. And I'm really excited you kind of just show a little bit of that athleticism come to combine time. So I'm really excited.
Hell yeah, man. Well, I'm excited for it too. Really appreciate the time.
Sure.
Link Riley. Is that the biggest guess this podcast has had? I mean, that guy had an aura
at least
about
the richest.
A champion, at least the richest. We didn't get a question about if we could use the private jet, but I think it would have been a yes. As for Ikem Ekwonu, that interview was really short. But we just randomly saw him in Radio Row and fucking threw him on. I got to get him on. I was talking to him a lot before we started recording about when Dane Brugler of The Athletic mocked him #1. Said his mom sent him the text. He's like, dude, Icky. Yeah. It was incredible.
That was the definition of his mom's not even that high on him.
It's true. It's true. That's literally the definition. His mom's like, dude, are you sure?
Yeah.
Mom was on the comments on The Athletic. Hey, man, I don't know. He feels more like a safe top 5 player. That's incredible. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back tomorrow. Make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Send us your name suggestions for the audience, and we should be good to go. Until next time, Austin Gayle, Mike Renner, Tailgate.